Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewire to Inspire. The show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewire to Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to my podcast, Rewire to Inspire. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am thrilled, as always, to be jumping on the microphone with you all. Today, we are doing episode number 149. If you missed my last episode, 148, 5 reasons you're feeling stuck, I really encourage you guys to check out that episode. I thoroughly enjoyed recording that episode. They were all benchmarks and things that I had realized in hindsight of why I personally was feeling stuck. And so if any way, shape, or form a part of your life feels resistant, you feel stuck, you feel blocked, I definitely encourage you to check out that episode, do some reflection, and see how you can begin to pivot your life. Today's episode, and I'm also just recognizing in real time right now, a lot of my episodes lately are kind of around growing our self-awareness, how we view ourselves. Because I truly believe that if we do not view ourselves accurately, we will never be able to show up accurately. And so what I mean by that is if you have self-identified yourself as someone who is less than, who is incapable, who is not smart, not worthy, whatever, you aren't going to take the necessary actions that you need to take to change that script for yourself, to change the trajectory of your life. But I also realize in hindsight that all these narratives in which we carry about ourselves, we carry for a reason. And we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to go back in our life and get curious for ourselves of where they came from, how they've served us at one part of our life or another, but are they most optimal for the life that you have aspiring in your mind and the life that you would like to live in the future? And so today's episode is really in tandem with that. And today I want to talk about if you're owning what you're good at. If I even said to you, hey, what would you say you're really good at? I'm curious to know if you would have an instinct response, if you would physiologically kind of draw back, if you would have certain things that you would just hammer off, if they are things that maybe somebody else has self-assigned to you, and so that's how the belief was formed, or if it's something that you actually believe about yourself. And I've been recognizing this last week specifically has been a huge week of mirrors for me. And what I mean by that is I've been turning within and I have been asking myself and contemplating a lot of hard questions. I've been doing a lot of energy work, a lot of healing, and reflecting on my life and getting honest with myself if the path I'm on is the path that is truly fully in alignment for me, or if it was at one point in time, but maybe it's shifted. And I recognized that a huge part of why I was on that trajectory is because I wasn't owning what I was good at. I had self-assigned things to myself that other people had kind of pushed onto me because they believed that I would be good at it. And in some ways, in hindsight, yes, we can be really good at different things, but then we also have to ask ourselves, are we not doing the things that we truly feel we're good at because we've made up excuses like we don't have time, oh, they don't pay the bills, whatever it is, insert excuse here. But the thing is if you are living your whole life not owning and celebrating and leaning into the things that you're good at, there's always going to be a part of you that feels undervalidated. There's always going to be a part of you that feels like it's missing. And I feel like this has been huge for me lately. And so a lot of this, I truly believe, comes down to comparison. And comparison, as I've talked about many times on this podcast, it is a part of us as human species by design, right? And it can be really helpful in inspiring us and giving us ideas and opening our curiosity, motivating us, right? But when you compare so much to other people that you forget about your own unique abilities, more damage can begin to happen than good. And so, as somebody personally who is very hypercritical on myself, I am constantly benchmarking myself up against the best. If I am curious about an area of life, for example, recently, speaking has been a big thing for me. My natural tendency is to then go figure out who are the best speakers in the world, and I compare myself to them. Now, I truly believe, and this is not to sound like I have my shit figured out, because I don't, but my awareness is high enough to know that they only got there through repetition. They weren't born phenomenal speakers. They had to work their way there. And so I think that I'm pretty good in the way that when I compare myself, I also know that they have more reps than me. They have time on me. They have age on me, like all these things. However, when we constantly benchmark ourselves up against other people, it's really easy to lose sight of what we're really good at, especially if you're somebody who kind of takes a step backwards when you're around other people and you're not really owning who you are. It's really easy to holistically forget about the things that you're really good at. And when that happens, really all we're doing is hurting ourselves. Even in talking about this subject, there's a part of me feeling pulled to say in real time, I think there's a part of us that feels selfish. We feel imposter. We feel cocky, maybe is another word coming up, when we own the things that we're good at. And for some reason, society tells us like, yeah, own your shit, own what you're good at, but like, don't go too far. Don't make other people feel uncomfortable. Don't make other people feel less than. And so I think we've all learned to kind of minimize ourselves, to shrink ourselves, to lessen ourselves, which I just want to say does the square root of nothing. It does absolutely nothing. And it causes us to have this miscued perception of ourselves and not allowing ourselves to own and celebrate the things that you are really, really, really good at. And the thing is if we don't lean into that, we can't get better at them. If we don't trust it, we can't improve on it. And so it's really just so many wasted talents. In the Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, it's a book. One of the first things that is talked about is I didn't live a life true to myself. If you're not owning what you're good at, you're not living a life true to yourself. That is the number one regret of people when they were on their deathbed is I wish I had lived a life true to myself. I want you to just take a moment and see how that lands for you. I know obviously it's a redundant, hard question to ask yourself, but if you were on your deathbed right now, what would be your number one regret? What would come up for you? Likely for so many of us, it's the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. I wish I would have done something, right? I wish I would have taken that leap of faith. I wish I would have believed in myself more. I wish I would have just tried and seen what happened. But what if I'm here to tell you that you don't have to wait to be on your deathbed to do that? You have that choice every single day when you wake up. And I want to be that reminder for you today that it's not too late. And I do truly believe it starts with owning what you're good at. It starts with being curious. And even if you can't identify something right away, there is something that you are better at than other people and vice versa. And we would all be naive to think that that isn't true. Yes, there's always going to be people ahead of us, but the same rings true in reverse, that there's always going to be people behind us. If you do not accurately assign that to yourself, you're almost always going to feel like crap about yourself. You're always going to shrink your value. Your vibe is going to be lower as a byproduct of that. And I also just think it's the most beautiful thing in the world when people are owning their uniqueness. Someone had asked me a question a couple of months ago. I can't remember what it was. Something like, what is your favorite thing to witness? I can't remember. I was going back and forth on a team huddle. And I remember my mind just went to, I love seeing people in like their truest self. Like when they are just owning who they are in that light, in flow, you can see that they are just glowing. That is my favorite thing to witness. And that feeling is contagious. It is so contagious. A good example of this that most people could probably relate to is if you've ever seen a singer or a band and you can just see the passion radiating off of them. There's a part of you that's just so happy in watching them. That's because they're operating at a very high vibration. When we own and we celebrate and we lean into those parts of us that we know we're really good at, we can see that in each other. Yet we have such a hard time thinking that that's okay to do for ourselves. That is the message I want to drive today. And so I encourage you to reflect for yourself right now. If somebody asked you, what are your strengths? What would you say? And I don't want you to say something like very, very surface level. I want you to get deep and vulnerable. What are you good at that should you choose to lean into and celebrate, you would feel so good about yourself? On the contrary, I want you to also reflect, what are your weaknesses? What is it that you feel you struggle with? And I can pretty much guarantee that these are going to be a lot easier to list because you've likely hyperfixated on these for your whole life. When somebody asks our weaknesses, we're like, blah, 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 blah. Super easy. It's permission giving. There's no like ickiness. But then when we go to say what our strengths are, we're like, oh, like I'm kind of good at painting. One time I won an award for this thing, but like it wasn't a big deal. And like for some reason, we have such reluctancy and fear around owning our shit. Prime example. There is trophies behind me from basketball when I was younger. And I chose the 3 that meant the most to me and I put them behind me. They are not there to flex about my high school awards. They are there to remind me of how much I dimmed my own light and didn't lean into my strengths because I had so much fear around what other people would think. If I self-assigned that to myself, I had fear of being perceived as arrogant. The trophy that is right there behind me, if you're watching video, you can see. If not, there is a trophy behind me. I got that my grad year. And I got it for Female Athlete of the Year. And I remember there was like 2 parts of me in this moment. One part of me during the ceremony knew that I worked my ass off, knew that I was so deserving, knew that it was everything that I had wanted from grade 9. I told myself my grade 12 year, I'm getting Female Athlete of the Year. I had self-promised myself that far in advance, and I knew I was working so hard for it. Then when it actually happened, I remember during my basketball coach's speech, he was raving me up in this moment and just really pouring into me and being very proud of me. And I remember there was a moment in a part of me that was like, please stop talking. People are going to hate me. Instead of celebrating that I had never missed a practice, I had never missed a game, I was on every sports team, I hustled my ass off, I always went above and beyond. And instead of celebrating my hard work, I self-deprecated and I wanted the validation to stop. We all have these intense protectors around us. I think a lot of that comes from having low self-worth within yourself. And you just feel like if you get all that attention or if you get that validation, like something's going to happen. And I keep that behind me as a reminder to be accurate in how I view myself. If I do not own that in comparison to most podcasters, I'm not saying I'm top of the top of the top. I am by no means top of the top of the top. However, I have been more consistent than, I'm going to shoot as far as to say like 95% of podcasters. I have not missed having 2 episodes a week in over a year. In fact, last week marked a year. That is more rare than people realize. But if I don't self-assign that to myself, I can't celebrate and own and have a feel-good moment to keep going. There's areas in your life, my beautiful friend listening, that you are not owning as being good at. You are not owning how uniquely good you are at that thing. And guess what? That is serving nobody. That is not serving you in any way, shape, or form. By dimming your light, in fact, all you're doing is hurting yourself. Here's the thing. If you own what you're good at, and it pushes people away, it intimidates people, makes people think certain things, whatever. they're not your damn people. I had to learn that lesson the hard way. There are so many people that aren't in my life anymore because when I started owning my truth and owning what I'm good at and leaning into that, I unfortunately got a lot of lash out. People didn't like it. Here's the thing. That's not my problem. And I don't say any of this to sound rude or to sound entitled in any way, shape, or form, but I need to lead by example because I would have been the first I never would have self-assigned or said what I just said about being a podcaster a couple months ago. This is very new for me, but I'm also recognizing if I do not lead by example and give people permission to lean into that, I'm not going to be a very effective leader. I think so much of it is because it's internal beliefs that we have from when we're younger. And until we learn to trust that it's okay and in fact needed for more of us to lean into our truth, imagine if you had everybody around you that leaned into what they were good at and they celebrated that and then you celebrated them and then the same happened for you when it was your turn. You would feel so much more permission to do so. But the thing is because so many folks around us aren't, we don't feel like we have the space or capacity or ability to do the same thing. So I want you to leave here and I want you to start to self-assign what it is that you are good at. I had so many things written down for today's episode, and I'm choosing to kind of start to step away from writing things down. I'm going to flip the page here. It might be a little loud. Because I truly believe a lot of me writing stuff down has served me as a protector, right? It's been there to help me, to guide me. And yes, it's been useful, but I really, really want my podcast to switch from that and to just come from my heart and my experiences. And I have felt a shift personally in how I've showed up to the microphone in the last couple of months. And I want to continue to lean into that because I am shifting and growing in more ways than I can explain. And all I want to do is to be able to echo that in a way that helps you guys do the same thing. Because listen, and this is me accurately self-assigning, I am not better than you. I am not ahead of you. I am nothing more than you. But what I am is I am consistent. I am disciplined. I show up. That's what's going to set the difference. If you want to own something, you also have to have the merit and the work behind it. If you want to lean in and own the things that you're good at and be able to celebrate them, you also have to show your mind and your brain that you are matching those beliefs. The only way that we can really start to self-assign is through action. We cannot form an identity around something and believe something if there's not enough merit and evidence for our brain to believe so, to self-identify. And so the only way that I've been able to say that I'm a podcaster and I'm consistent and I am disciplined is because I've had to be consistent. I've had to be disciplined. It is 7:00 on a Friday night right now and I'm recording because guess what? I will not miss. I will not miss producing content because that is a promise I made to myself. I have to own that and I have to know that. Here's the thing. We need to know that we have weaknesses. We need to know that we have strengths. And it can be so easy to get fixated on being behind that our worth takes a gigantic hit. And when that happens, we have two options. We can either lean into that and be humble and we can go learn and we can go figure it out, or we can run away and we can make it excuses. I wrote down some benefits of accurately viewing yourself because oftentimes we don't do something if we don't think it's worth it. I wanted to make this worth it to you. I want you to know how important it is that you recognize, celebrate, and own the things that you're good at. And so the first thing that I wrote down, which is kind of the theme of what we've been talking about, is it allows you to see yourself more accurately. I was talking with my partner a couple days ago. We were sitting on the couch chatting, and we were talking about this exact subject. This is largely where this surfaced from. And we were talking about a bell curve and how if you do not self-assign yourself as being ahead of the bell curve or on the top 1% or bottom 1%, you will constantly be inaccurate in self-assigning. Let me go deeper. I don't think that made sense. For example, if I walk into a room with 10 people and none of them are speakers, none of them are podcasters, it would be naive and hurtful for me to lump myself in the same category, thinking I'm at the same level. And again, I understand all of this sounds so cocky, so selfish, so narcissistic. And that's the problem. Even talking about it feels icky. And I'm not saying you need to walk in a room all macho and say, I'm better than you, blah, blah, blah. No. But if we don't own our shit and own what we're good at, first of all, we'll never grow because we'll always dim our light. Other people will then begin to view you inaccurately because if you are not self-assigning, they are definitely not going to self-assign. And so just theoretically, we're talking about this walking in a room, 10 people, and accurately viewing yourself of where you're at and owning that. But then in reverse, you also need to know when you are the bottom 1%, when there's people around you that are ahead of you, are you viewing yourself accurately, having enough humility and vulnerability to say, hey, this is not my genius zone. I do not have reps here. This is my time to listen and not speak. Imagine how much we could learn from each other if we honed in on that. If we leaned into what other people's strengths are, what our strengths are, and we celebrated that and we learned from each other instead of constantly having these egos butting heads, trying to be the best all the time. So this is clearly a subject that I am very passionate about because most of my life has been spent viewing myself inaccurately. I lessen my potential to a detriment, This is shifting big time. Again, the last 3 weeks have been largely focusing on harmonizing my thoughts and where I'm at and getting them to synergize together because I realized this was a huge blind spot for me that was blocking me in many, many, many ways. And I guarantee you there's blind spots in your life that you have not self-identified, you are not celebrating, and you have not leaned into. You need to find them, discover them, and trust that they are yours and uniquely yours for a reason and that they serve a purpose. It serves a purpose, not only to you, but to those around you for you to own that. I truly believe we each have a responsibility to improve that relationship with ourselves, to get better at that, because it doesn't serve anybody if we listen and we're quiet and we're not curious and explorative in that way. So viewing yourself more accurately. Second thing is you feel less imposter. So this comes back to kind of that analogy with walking in a room. I truly believe imposter is when you feel like you're not worthy of what it is that is happening for you. So this happened to me a lot in the beginning of coaching, roughly 8 months ago when I started. I had so much imposter. And I think that also just comes from not having reps, not having done it before, not having experienced it before. Of course, you're going to feel imposter syndrome if you've never done something before. But I think that when you celebrate and you validate and you own what you're good at, it allows you to have a little less imposter. And again, that bell curve, knowing, okay, I might only be in the top 30%, but this person that I'm working with is in the bottom 10%. And again, that's not to sound mean, it's just accuracy. So it's like, okay, I can guide them at a 20% difference. I'm ahead of them. I can guide them. If we don't do that and we don't self-assign and we just benchmark ourselves up the same as everybody else, that imposter is going to be so loud because we're going to put ourselves on the same level. We can't do that. It's inaccurate. And I know that we're not wired to think this way. And this isn't a way that I carry myself every single day by any stretch of the imagination. This is me behind the scenes so I can master my craft and I can guide effectively and I can podcast and speak and write and do all those things effectively. And none of this is usually verbal. But I think that it's important that we make it verbal so that you guys have the permission to do the same thing. And then kind of the last ones that I wrote down that all synergize together in a very beautiful way is you're more likely to try. If you've kind of self-assigned that you're good at something, you're more likely to try and fail and to get new awareness. But if you try something new and you fail at it, oftentimes it can be really hurtful and we'll shut down and we'll take a step back. But if you've already predetermined that you're kind of ahead of, the vast majority of people, you have reps in it, you're pretty good at it, You're more willing to take risks and to try and fail and to see what happens. And then the last thing I had wrote down is you'll feel more empowered. Oh my God, that's like the biggest one out of all of those. You'll feel empowered. One of the most beautiful feelings that I truly believe exists is enlightenment, joy, and empowerment. Think of a time where you felt empowered, you felt good, you owned who you were comfortable in your being, you were comfortable with what you were doing, you were kind of feeling yourself a little bit. Best feeling in the whole world. Best feeling in the whole world. How can you begin to give yourself little ounces of that? Again, we don't want to be in that headspace all the time. That's when ego comes in. That's when we can overswing the pendulum. We need to stay at 5. We need to stay centered. But we have to lean into that a little bit of knowing where we fall so that we're able to show up accurately and accordingly. So that's really all I had about today's episode, you guys, is the main message I want you to leave with is, are you validating the things that you're good at? Are you owning them? Are you self-identifying them to yourself? Are you trusting them? Do you trust that it's possible for you to be good at those things? And whatever it is that surfaced for you, it surfaced for a reason. I encourage you to work on your relationship with them. And if nothing comes up, there is something. I promise you that there is something. Sometimes it's helpful to ask those around us if we can't think of anything, like, hey, what do you think I'm really good at? And I guarantee you, those around you that love and support you will have so many things, so many beautiful things to say about you. But it's a matter of making it personal and putting that in your own consciousness and in your own verbiage and self-assigning that to yourself. So, you guys, all the love. Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. Happy August. I hope your month is off to a phenomenal start. I'm still processing the fact that it's August. The heck? I don't know. As much as I love fall and I'm really excited, I'm also like, we need to pump the brakes a little bit because summer do be moseying a little too quickly for my liking. But anyways, you guys, so excited. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, and I look forward to chatting with you all on Thursday for episode 150. We're hitting a milestone. I'm so excited. So I look forward to seeing you there. All the love. Chat with you soon. Bye, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am at Jessie Brown 13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.